The Valley of Unremembered Dreams. Malachi awoke with the taste of cold silver on his tongue and the fading memory of distant stars burning behind his eyes. For several heartbeats, he lay motionless upon the stone floor of the ritual chamber, suspended between waking and dreaming. The familiar contours of the room emerged slowly from the darkness. Candle flames flickered in iron sconces along the walls, their light wavering across ancient masonry dampened by centuries beneath caliphas. Shadows stretched and shifted across the chamber, like living things retreating from the intrusion of consciousness. The scent of melted wax mingled with crushed dream lotus petals, and the lingering trace of incense burned during Phalia's ritual. At last, Phalia broke the silence. Her voice was little more than a whisper, yet it carried clearly through the chamber.
The path remains open.
Those 4 words seemed to drain what little strength remained in her. She lowered herself carefully onto a nearby chair, her hands trembling slightly as she brushed loose strands of dark hair from her face. The ritual had taken a visible toll. Fine lines of fatigue marked her features, and her skin possessed the pale, translucent quality of someone who had spent too long gazing into places mortals were never meant to see. Jock studied the signet ring and frowned.
This trinket is not going to get us to the mad poet. What about the other gifts you talked about?
Thalia's eyes drifted toward the basin. For a moment she seemed reluctant to answer, as though speaking the names aloud might attract unwanted attention.
The Night Had's hearthstone and the Pard's tail. These things too will come to you if you do exactly as I say. What you do then is an entirely different matter.
Angelica scowled.
I'm sick of all this mumbo-jumbo. We are spending all this time trying to find the mad poet when we should be tracking Lowell's. Who cares about the Necronomicon? It's just another stupid magic book.
Zenobia put her hand on the fighter's arm. She flinched reflexively, but then relaxed. The wizard, now witch, spoke in a calm but authoritative voice.
We are all exhausted, but the Necronomicon is not merely a book of spells. It is a doorway into truths the human mind was never built to understand. The book does not merely possess people. It gives ambitious or desperate people enough knowledge to destroy themselves and those around them. It is a portal, not simple to a realm of monsters, but to a black void of nothingness. We must prevent Lowell's from obtaining the book, and only the poet knows where it is.
Malachi nodded.
We find the gifts, then the Yellow King takes us to the poet. He tells us where to find the book, and when Lowell shows up there, we put an end to all of this once and for all.
Angelica folded her arms and laughed ironically. Outside, thunder rumbled somewhere beyond the city walls. The distant sound rolled through the stone foundations of the theater and echoed faintly within the chamber. Malachi felt an involuntary chill run down his spine. The names carried weight. They felt less like objects and more like promises of future danger. Without another word, Thalia reached into a small leather pouch and scattered a handful of silver dust across the surface of the basin. The particles drifted downward like falling stars. As they touched the dark water, ripples spread outward in concentric circles. Slowly, the reflection began to change. The ceiling vanished. The chamber disappeared. In its place appeared a sky unlike any found upon Golarion, filled with vast constellations that shimmered in impossible colors. The air within the room seemed to grow thinner. The candles bent, as though caught in a sudden wind. Rekus felt the familiar sensation returning, the peculiar vertigo that accompanied every passage into the dreamlands. Reality itself appeared to loosen around the edges. Thalia looked up at them one final time.
Go. The door is open. Go now.
The stars in the basin expanded until they filled his vision entirely. The chamber vanished. The world dissolved. And once more, the Dreamlands welcomed them back into its embrace. When awareness returned, it arrived with the scent of spice-laden winds drifting across sun-warmed stone. Arabella opened her eyes, to find herself seated beneath a canopy of embroidered silk, whose crimson fabric glowed softly beneath the light of unfamiliar stars. The caravanserai spread before her much as she remembered it, rising from the surrounding desert like an island of civilization amid an endless sea of silver dunes. Lanterns hung from archways and balconies throughout the sprawling complex, casting pools of golden light across courtyards crowded with the dream echoes of merchants, travelers and dreamers drawn from 100 impossible lands. Yet something had changed. The night hag's dark presence was palpable. Whatever lair she occupied, its location was known only to her servants. If the party wished to obtain the Hearthstone, one of those servants would have to talk. The trap they devised was simple enough. A lone wanderer entering the caravanserai with a magical ring of gold. Angelica pointed silently towards the shadows as Zenobia strolled brazenly across the abandoned courtyard. Hunched figures came into view, moving with a disturbing grace. Their bodies appeared almost boneless as they flowed down the slopes of the dunes. Long limbs bent at unnatural angles. Pale flesh gleamed beneath the moonlight. As they drew closer, their features became visible. 5 Leng ghouls emerged from the darkness. The creatures advanced cautiously, circling the ruins expected to find a frightened traveler or exhausted dreamers. Instead, they found death. The first ghoul died before it understood what was happening. Zenobia's spell exploded amidst the pack in a burst of sapphire light. Arcane fire illuminated the desert for hundreds of yards, casting enormous shadows across the ruins. The blast hurled one creature backward into a fallen column, while the others shrieked in alarm. Jock charged before the echoes faded.
Remember me? Here's a little present for you.
The impact of his hammer sounded like a siege engine striking a fortress wall. Bone shattered. The second ghoul crumpled lifelessly into the sand. Chaos followed. The creatures scattered in every direction. One vanished behind a dune while another attempted to leap atop a ruined pillar, only to be intercepted by Angelica. Her blades flashed silver, then crimson. Malachi's holy symbol blazed with radiant power. Brilliant light flooded the battlefield, forcing the remaining creatures into retreat. Arabella unleashed a barrage of occult energy that ripped through the darkness like shards of moonlit glass. Within moments, the fight was over. 4 ghouls lay dead. The 5th squirmed beneath Jock's heavy boot. Its claws gouged deep furrows into the earth. Foam gathered around its mouth as it snarled and hissed. Angelica pressed a blade against its throat. The ghoul's chest rose and fell rapidly as its yellow eyes darted from face to face.
No more, please. I beg you.
The creature called itself Skrith, or at least that was the closest approximation its twisted tongue could manage. Jock pushed his boot into the ghoul's ribs, and it winced in pain.
The night hag. You know where she is? Tell us.
Please, I don't know what you are.
Thus the flash of Angelica's blade was so quick it was nearly imperceptible. A twisted lump of flesh rolled across the sand as blood gushed from the ghoul's head, where its ear had been.
One more ear, and then I start on your eyes.
But she will kill me!
If you don't start talking, there won't be anything left of you for her to kill.
Mother Blacktown watches. She always watches.
Angelica crouched before the trapped ghoul.
Where is she?
There is a hidden underground entrance to her lair, but once you set foot there, the rules are not the same. She lives in the nightmare realm of Len, and if you die, you will linger there as a shade forever.
Angelica smiled.
Show us.
The House of Forgotten Sleep. The passage wound steadily downward through smooth black stone. No evidence suggested that tools had ever shaped the tunnel. The walls possessed a strange organic quality, as though the earth itself had grown around the passage rather than being excavated to create it. Their surfaces reflected almost no light. Lanterns illuminated only a few feet ahead, leaving the deeper darkness untouched. As they descended, the air grew colder. The smell changed as well. The sense of sand and desert slowly disappeared, replaced by damp stone and stagnant water. Beneath those odors lurked something else. A faint sweetness lingered in the tunnels, subtle enough to escape notice at first. The smell reminded Arabella of old parchment and dried flowers left forgotten within a sealed chest for many years. The passage eventually opened into a cavern so vast that its ceiling disappeared beyond the reach of their light. Pale fungi clung to the walls in sprawling clusters. Their ghostly blue luminescence cast an eerie glow across the chamber, creating an environment devoid of true darkness, yet strangely absent of genuine light. Every surface appeared washed in dim twilight. The deeper tunnels contained traps, not simple mechanical devices, but subtle horrors designed to prey upon the minds of intruders. One corridor induced powerful hallucinations. As the party crossed it, each member briefly glimpsed figures from their past, standing in the darkness ahead. Malachi saw the brutal violence loosed upon his family by his grandfather. Angelica began to see cages in the lines of every shadow. Jock stared silently as apparition of those he had killed pointed spectral fingers at him accusingly. Hours passed. The tunnels twisted deeper. The silence became oppressive. Eventually, they reached a massive stone bridge, spanning a chasm of impossible depth. The sound of distant whispers drifted upward through the darkness. At the far side of the bridge stood an enormous archway carved from black stone. As Rikus approached, runes appeared in the ancient stone, glowing with a cold blue light. A low vibration filled the chamber, and the stone wall disappeared behind a swirling veil of silver mist. Shapes moved beyond it, unfamiliar stars, distant towers, and the shadow of something immense passing across a violet sky. It was some kind of portal. The Skald ran hand across the glowing runes.
The House of Forgotten Sleep. Interesting. By now, I'm sure the Lady of the House is expecting us. We should not disappoint her.
He disappeared into the portal. Even from a distance, the structure inspired unease. The architecture seemed wrong. Angles met where angles should not meet. Corridors disappeared into walls only to emerge elsewhere entirely. Towers rose from the cavern floor, before curving sideways like branches seeking sunlight. The entire structure possessed the unsettling quality of a dream, struggling unsuccessfully to imitate reality. As the party approached the entrance, the pale fungal light around them began to dim. The darkness itself seemed as if it was moving. Then, a shape detached itself from the wall, then another, and then a third. The shadows gathered like liquid ink spilling across stone. They stretched upward, taking vaguely humanoid forms whose features shifted and dissolved with every movement. Hollow eyes opened within faces that possessed no substance. Their bodies appeared woven from darkness and memory. They peeled away from the walls in ragged, human-like shapes, thin, twisted figures with hollow faces and clawed hands. Their bodies trailed into smoke as they swept through the chamber without sound. A wave of unnatural cold passed over the companions, extinguishing their lanterns and frosting the edges of their weapons. Jock met the first creature head-on, swinging his warhammer through its chest. The blow scattered its body into tatters of darkness, but the thing reformed around the weapon and reached through his armor with a spectral hand. Jock staggered as warmth and strength drained from his limbs.
God damn, that hurts. Malachi, get your ass up here and send these dirtbag shadows back to whatever crypt they crawled out of.
Malachi raised his holy symbol and called upon Pharasma. Pale light spread from the symbol, forcing one of the wraiths back, its mouths opening in silent screams. But the others slipped past. One descended upon Rikus, wrapping its long arms around him. His defiant battle song broke into a gasp as his face turned pale and his knees bowed. Another wraith struck Percival, passing through his body like a knife through smoke. The Dreamland's cat collapsed beside the portal, his breathing shallow and his eyes unfocused. For a terrible moment, both lay motionless, the remaining shadows gathered above them, drawn to their fading lives. Malachi stepped between the wraiths and his fallen companions. He slammed the head of his holy mace against the stone floor and spoke Pharasma's name with such force that the chamber seemed to answer. Silver-white light erupted around him, spreading outward in a wave. The shadows recoiled, their bodies unraveling beneath the radiance. Malachi dropped beside Rikus and pressed a glowing hand against his chest. Breath returned to the bard in a sharp, painful gasp. He then turned to Percival, murmuring a desperate prayer as the last warmth fled the sorcerer's body.
Pharasma, Lady of Graves, Keeper of the final door, this soul's appointed hour has not yet come. Turn aside the shadow, bind flesh to spirit, and restore what pain has broken. By your will let them rise and walk their destined path a little longer.
The light around Malachi flared. Percival's eyes opened. Across the chamber, Jock and Arabella drove the weakened wraiths back toward the portal. One by one, the creatures were torn apart by steel, magic, and Pharasma's light, until only drifting wisps of darkness remained. The battle against the shadow wraiths left the party battered, exhausted, and uncertain of how much of themselves they had lost. Though the creatures had ultimately been driven back by steel, faith, and sorcery, each victory carried a hidden cost. Fragments of memory had been torn away during the struggle. Small things, perhaps, but deeply personal ones. Angelica could no longer recall the tune of a song her mother had sung during childhood. Malachi found himself unable to remember the face of the priest who had first welcomed him into Pharasma's service. Even Arabella noticed gaps in her recollection, absences that felt like missing teeth within the structure of her undying mind. Yet the House of Forgotten Sleep still lay before them. The corridors beyond seemed almost alive. Pale fungal light spilled across floors worn smooth by countless feet, though who those travelers had been and where they had gone remained impossible to say. Names covered every wall. Some appeared fresh, scratched into the stone by desperate fingers. Others seemed ancient beyond reckoning. As the party ventured deeper into the labyrinth, blue-green witchfire floated lazily through the air, casting an eerie illumination across the cavern. The walls were lined with towering shelves filled with objects gathered over centuries of theft and barter. Crystal bottles containing trapped dreams sat beside preserved hearts suspended in black fluid. Mirrors reflected impossible landscapes. Books bound in unfamiliar skin rested beside cages occupied by things that should not have existed. At the center of the cavern stood a structure resembling a house.
These witches always give me the creeps. I mean, not you, Zenobia. You know what I mean?
Zenobia nodded and smiled slightly. The building had been constructed atop a broad stone platform overlooking a tremendous pit that occupied much of the chamber's floor. The abyss descended beyond sight. Cold air drifted upward from its depths, carrying faint whispers and the distant sound of something moving far below. A silver cage hung above the house. Inside floated a black crystal no larger than a human fist, the Hearthstone. The moment Percival saw it, he knew what it was.
Every soul crystal is a door pretending to be a prison, or a prison pretending to be a door. And in the dreamlands, they do not just imprison the soul, they teach it to dream without you.
Tiny lights flickered beneath the crystal's dark surface, like stars trapped inside a fragment of night. The party had barely taken a step forward when a voice echoed through the cavern.
Why have you come to disturb my peace? You have come a very long way to die.
The words emerged from everywhere at once. The shadows beneath the house stirred. A figure stepped into view. Mother Blacktongue was taller than any mortal woman. Her body appeared draped in layers of ragged black fabric that seemed woven from darkness itself. Her skin possessed the color and texture of old parchment stretched tightly over bone. Long white hair cascaded to her waist, moving as though submerged in unseen water. Her eyes glowed with a pale silver light that reflected nothing human. When she smiled, the expression revealed teeth far too sharp and far too numerous. The night hag descended the steps of her house with slow, deliberate movements. There was no fear in her posture, no uncertainty. She carried herself with the confidence of a creature that had survived longer than empires and watched civilizations crumble into dust. Her gaze settled upon the intruders. Anger simmered beneath her expression, not rage, something colder and far more dangerous.
You have broken my wards and slain my children. Even now your presence is disruption, the delicate forces that knit our worlds together. And yet you continue to trade with heavy feet, oblivious to your transgressions. Fools.
The party remained silent. The hag's silver eyes narrowed.
And now you stand before me. Explain yourselves.
Zenobia stepped forward.
Mother of witches, we mean no disrespect. We come not in anger, but seek your wisdom and counsel.
She carefully recounted their journey. She spoke of a mad poet and the quest to restore what remained of Count Hazelton Lowes' shattered mind. Finally, she explained the significance of the three gifts and described their need for the hearthstone. Throughout the explanation, Mother Blacktongue listened without interruption. Her expression revealed nothing. But then she spoke.
Listen carefully. The great powers of the Dreamlands do not trade as mortals do. The poet's madness is not confusion. It is vision. He sees truths that sane minds were never shaped to endure. He may answer your questions, but every answer will open another door inside you, and something will be waiting on the other side.
The hag's smile widened.
The guardians of the Dreamlands are ancient, proud, and bound by laws older than your gods. They may honor the exact words of a bargain, while destroying everything you hope to gain from it. Show fear, and they will hunt you. Show arrogance, and they will humble you. Show desire, and they will use it as a chain.
The hag moved towards the group, eyeing them closely.
And if I should give you the hearthstone, what will you give to me?
She turned and looked directly at Rikus. Her long fingers closed around his hand. The big man visibly flinched as a ripple of silver light passed through the hag's eyes. Then she began laughing. Rikus attempted to pull away, but the hag's grip remained impossibly firm. At last, she released his hand. For the first time, genuine interest appeared upon her ancient face.
My lady, I can assure you that while I do find you quite interesting, I am unfortunately spoken for at the moment.
The hag laughed, but did not look away.
You will kill a great fiend.
The words echoed through the cavern. Rikus frowned. Mother Blacktongue's gaze remained fixed upon him.
You will kill something ancient, something terrible. Even now, its gaze is upon you. It sees you. It knows your face.
Mother Blacktongue turned toward the abyss behind her. For several moments she gazed into the depths as though listening to something far below. The hearthstone appeared in her hand as she handed it to Rikus.
When it dies, its soul belongs to me. That is my price.
The following evening, after a much-needed rest within the safety of the waking world, the party gathered once more beneath the Harroday Theatre. Though their bodies had recovered from the wounds and exhaustion suffered within the Dreamlands, none of them felt entirely at ease. The bargain with Mother Blacktongue lingered in their thoughts, like a shadow cast by a distant storm. Even Percival seemed unusually quiet. The Dreamland's cat sat upon a nearby table, while Failure completed the ritual. His sleek, grey fur reflected the candlelight, and his golden eyes followed every movement with intense concentration. Throughout their adventures, he had proven charming, clever, and occasionally infuriating, but Angelica and Zenobia had begun noticing subtle inconsistencies in the creature's stories. Certain details never quite aligned. Questions about the Pard's tale often produced evasive answers. Whenever the conversation turned toward the Moon Pod, Percival's usual wit gave way to uncomfortable silence. Tonight, however, he appeared almost eager. As the final verses of the ritual echoed through the chamber, the cat's tail twitched with barely concealed anticipation. The familiar sensation of falling upwards seized them. Reality dissolved, and once again, the party entered the Dreamlands. When awareness returned, Angelica found herself clinging to a tree branch nearly 200 feet above the forest floor. The realization arrived with immediate alarm. The branch beneath her was broad enough to support her weight, yet it swayed gently in the wind. All around her stretched an endless sea of foliage, illuminated by pale emerald light. Towering trees rose like living pillars into the heavens, their trunks wider than city towers, and their branches intertwining to form an entire world suspended high above the ground. For a moment she simply stared. The forest was breathtaking. Compared to the desolate wasteland she had been raised in, this was an alien world. Far below, hidden beneath layers of foliage, something moved through the shadows. The sound carried upward faintly. The distant call of unseen creatures echoed throughout the forest.
This is it. I can feel it.
Percival stood upon a nearby branch with an expression impenetrable to human eyes.
Beyond the gates of waking thought, where black stars drift through violet seas, the Dreamlands gather every path that mortal feet refused to take. The gentlest road through fields of glass may end beneath a stranger's grave. Yet every fate is tightly bound. The sleeper, spider, moon, and knife are knots within a greater dream. And somewhere past the final door, the weaver dreams that she is woven.
Malachi studied him carefully.
You seem familiar with the place, almost as if you have been here before.
Percival's ears twitched. Before anyone could pursue the matter further, movement erupted among the branches surrounding them. Small shapes emerged from the foliage, dozens of them. At first, Rikus mistook them for oversized rats. Then one leaped onto a nearby branch, and he saw its face. The creature possessed a rat-like body covered in shaggy brown fur. Its oversized ears twitched constantly, and its yellow eyes gleamed with malicious intelligence. Tiny hands gripped a crude spear fashioned from sharpened bone. More creatures appeared around it, chattering excitedly in shrill voices. Zoobs. The creatures surrounded the party from every direction. Branches shook as more emerged from hidden nests woven throughout the canopy. Some carried spears, others wielded slings or sharpened sticks. Several perched atop higher branches and hissed angrily upon spotting Percival.
Miserable little root-gnawing vermin. You skulk beneath honest trees, stink of wet fur and fungus. Rats at least possess the dignity to know what they are. You dress your cowardice in cunning and call yourselves a people. I have seen fleas with nobler bloodlines.
The tiny creatures darted through the branches with astonishing agility. They leaped between vines, scrambled along tree trunks, and attacked from every conceivable direction. Their small size made them difficult targets, while their intimate familiarity with the forest allowed them to vanish almost instantly whenever pressed. Yet numbers alone could not overcome the party. Zenobia unleashed a burst of arcane energy that scattered half a dozen creatures from the branches. Jock smashed an entire section of natural bridge apart with a single swing of his hammer, sending a cluster of zoogs tumbling into the foliage below. Angelica moved like a shadow among the leaves, striking swiftly before disappearing into the confusion. Within minutes, the creatures began retreating. Their shrill cries echoed through the forest as they fled into hidden tunnels and nests concealed among the branches. The party had barely caught their breath when the forest itself attacked. One of the massive flowering vines hanging nearby suddenly convulsed. Thick tendrils exploded outward. A blossom the size of a carriage unfolded overhead, revealing rows of thorn-covered petals surrounding a maw filled with glistening teeth. The creature had remained perfectly disguised among the surrounding vegetation until the moment it struck. Its vines lashed outward with terrifying speed. One wrapped around Malaki's leg and attempted to drag him toward the waiting mouth. Another snapped toward Rikis, leaving droplets of green venom sizzling upon the bark where they landed. The plant's toxic secretions filled the air with a bitter odor. Wherever its vines struck, wood blackened and leaves shriveled. Several branches dissolved entirely beneath the corrosive poison, forcing the party to leap between precarious footholds while avoiding both the creature and the dizzying drop below. Zenobia began to cast.
Begone, foul and stinking vine. Let the hidden laws bend to my command. Break, burn, and be undone.
Eventually, the witch's fire proved too much for it. Flames engulfed the central blossom. The plant writhed violently as its leaves curled inward. Moments later, the entire creature collapsed into smoldering ruin, releasing a cloud of black spores that drifted harmlessly away upon the wind. Silence slowly returned to the canopy. The forest seemed to exhale. Far below, hidden beneath countless layers of foliage, the dark ground finally became visible through a gap created during the battle. Percival stared downward. For the first time since their arrival, his expression became serious.
We must all go down.
The party spent the next hour carefully descending through the forest. Massive vines served as ladders, while natural bridges connected lower levels of the canopy. The journey revealed an entirely different world beneath the treetops. Sunlight grew increasingly scarce. Strange fungi illuminated the darkness with pale blue light. The air became cooler and carried the scent of damp earth and moss. By the time they reached the forest floor, the sky had vanished entirely behind the immense canopy overhead. Twilight reigned beneath the trees. The ground was covered in enormous roots that twisted across the earth like petrified serpents. Ancient stones protruded from the soil in scattered clusters, their surfaces worn smooth by countless centuries. Many bore carvings so weathered you were nearly impossible to decipher. Percival led them toward a circular clearing hidden among the roots. There, half concealed beneath layers of moss and fallen leaves, stood the remains of an ancient structure. At first glance, it appeared to be nothing more than a ring of broken stones. Closer inspection revealed otherwise. The stones formed the perimeter of a forgotten ruin. At its center lay a staircase descending into darkness. Cold air drifted upward from below. The smell reminded Jock of old tombs and long-abandoned places. Percival approached the entrance slowly. For several moments, he simply stared into the darkness. The confident and mischievous cat they knew seemed to disappear. Something softer emerged in its place. Something almost vulnerable.
Though here, I can feel her presence. I have been away far too long.
The great eye sees all. The transition through the portal lasted only an instant, yet Rikus emerged feeling as though he had fallen through 100 different worlds before arriving at his destination. The familiar sensation of displacement washed over him as his feet touched solid ground. Colors swam briefly at the edge of his vision before settling into focus. The cold stone beneath his boots felt real enough, but everything else seemed to belong to some impossible place beyond ordinary reality. For several moments, nobody spoke. The chamber before them defied easy description. It was enormous beyond measure. The ceiling vanished into a darkness so distant that it appeared less like a roof and more like a night sky. Strange lights drifted through the void overhead like slow-moving stars. Some glowed blue, others crimson or pale silver. Their reflections shimmered faintly upon surfaces that should not have reflected anything at all. The party stood upon a broad balcony carved from polished black stone. The structure curved around the perimeter of the chamber in a great circle, disappearing into the distance on both sides. Ornate railings lined its edge, though many sections had broken away long ago. Beyond the railing lay a drop of several hundred feet to the chamber floor below. Two immense staircases descended from opposite sides of the balcony. Arabella threw half-handful of sparkling dust in the air.
By thorn and moon, by root and rain, by paths unseen and names unspoken, I call thee from the twilight court. Cross now the veil of leaf and shadow. Come, spirit of the wild places, and stand beside me until our pact is done.
A tent-winged creature appeared in the girl's hand.
All right, Mum. Want me to look around some, do ya? I can tell you already, there's nothing nice about this place. But I'll do me job, I will.
The tiny creature flew off into the darkness.
You know, Graylin said we should trust you, but I don't know why. I don't know what you are. None of us do. And if you really are Arabella, well, that's even worse. 'Cause I have some unfinished business there.
Living forever is not a blessing, it's a curse. I feel the weight of my past lives like an iron chain. But our fates are tied together now, and I will be here to the end, no matter what is going to happen.
Before the Fae could return, Percival went down a staircase. Malachi rushed after the giant cat, only to see him disappear through a portal in a burst of light. Without hesitation, the cleric followed. He found himself standing in a large, ornate chamber. Their architecture reminded Malachi of some forgotten imperial palace, though the resemblance quickly vanished upon closer inspection. The floor below had been shattered. Thousands of cracked stone tiles spread across the vast chamber like fragments of a broken mosaic. Entire sections had collapsed inward. Jagged fissures divided the surface into uneven islands of stone. Through the gaps, something far more disturbing could be seen. There was no earth beneath the tiles, no lower floor, no foundation, only darkness. An endless black void stretched beneath the ruined stonework. It did not resemble ordinary shadow. The darkness seemed alive in some incomprehensible way. Tiny ripples occasionally passed across its surface, as though unseen currents flowed through an infinite sea, hidden beneath reality itself. The cleric quietly touched the holy symbol hanging around his neck and whispered a brief prayer.
This place seems strange even for the Dreamlands. I used to believe that the gods we knew were everything, all-seeing, but this world contains beings unknown even to the gods themselves. I fear in these places we are far beyond the powers of the gods we understand.
The rest of the party teleported into the chamber just in time to see a beholder floating effortlessly above the broken tiles. It was enormous. Zenobia had encountered descriptions of such entities before, but none had adequately conveyed the reality of seeing one in person. The creature's spherical body was larger than a wagon. Its leathery hide appeared ancient and scarred. Countless eye stalks writhed slowly around its bulk, like a nest of pale serpents, each ending in a blinking eye that moved independently of the others. Its central eye dominated the creature's face.
Oh!
The massive orb stared unblinkingly across the chamber, watching. For a moment, Rikus thought of the countless red eyes painted throughout the ruins beneath the grove. The great eye sees all. A chill crawled down his spine. Suspended beside the beholder floated a shimmering force cage composed of interlocking bands of silver light. Within the prison crouched a tiny figure no larger than a house cat. The moon parred. Even diminished by whatever magic constrained her, the creature possessed an unmistakable grace. Her silver-white fur shimmered faintly in the chamber's strange illumination. Golden eyes regarded the newcomers with a mixture of hope and disbelief. Thin chains of magical energy bound her limbs and disappeared into the structure of the cage itself. For a brief moment, complete silence filled the chamber. Then Percival saw her. The cat froze. The mask he had worn throughout their travels simply disappeared. For the first time since they had met him, Percival looked unsure. The imprisoned Pard lifted her head. Their eyes met across the vast chamber. Neither spoke. Then the beholder laughed. The sound echoed throughout the chamber like grinding stone.
You! I was wondering how long it would take. The great cats of Ulfar are gone. Poor moonborn princely, does your blood not whisper of that elder age, before mankind crawled upright from the mud, when cats held silent dominion of the black towers of earth, and hunted along silver roads between the stars? Your ancestors were worshipped as guardians of forbidden thresholds, and even the pale gods beyond the moon watched their passage with unease. Yet now, your race feed from painted bowls and answers to foolish apes who once trembled before your shadow. Look upon yourself, last heir of a forgotten sovereignty, a pet dreaming it is still a god, purring at the feet of creatures whose remote forefathers knelt bleeding before your temples. The ancient night remembers what you were, little cat, and it laughs.
The beholder's central eye narrowed. Percival took another step forward. His body began to glow. Golden light erupted around him. Muscles swelled beneath shimmering fur. Limbs lengthened. Claws extended like polished ivory daggers. His teal fur gleamed like moonlight upon fresh snow. Powerful shoulders rolled beneath his sleek frame. Golden eyes burned with fierce intensity as he stared across the chamber toward his ancient enemy. The beholder laughed.
When were you planning to tell them, you little band of monkeys conscripted to fight for you, that you were only using them to get to me?
The creature slowly turned toward the adventurers. Its gaze lingered on each of them, one by one, measuring. Percival's growl echoed across the chamber. The giant cat lowered himself into a crouch, muscles coiled, claws extended. The beholder's smile became impossibly wide, and far below the shattered floor, deep within the black void beneath the broken tiles, something enormous began to move. The Pard's Tail. The beholder attacked first. The creature's massive central eye widened, and a pale cone of invisible force swept across the chamber. Rikus felt the effect immediately.
By the great gods of battle, hear my cry. Let my voice ring with power, and fill my companions with the lust for war. Let my enemies be crushed before me into dust, and may I fill my heart with their tears and lamentations.
But the mighty occult energies surrounding him vanished as though extinguished by a sudden wind. Protective enchantments collapsed. Magical wards winked out of existence. Even the comforting presence of enchanted equipment faded into nothingness. A look of shock crossed Zenobia's face. She raised her hands and began the familiar gestures of a spell, but nothing happened. The arcane energies she commanded so effortlessly simply ceased to exist beneath the beholder's gaze. Malachi experienced the same frustration. The cleric reached instinctively for divine power, only to discover an empty silence where Pharasma's blessings should have been. His holy symbol hung lifeless around his neck. Prayers that normally brought warmth and certainty met only darkness. The beholder laughed. The great eye turned slowly, sweeping its gaze across the battlefield. A lance of crimson light erupted from one of the creature's eye stalks and slammed into the stone balcony. The explosion shattered ancient masonry and hurled fragments in every direction. Another ray followed immediately. This one struck Jock squarely in the chest. The fighter staggered backward as destructive energy coursed through his body, leaving blackened scorch marks across his armor.
By the gods, what in the nine hells is that thing? If I take another hit like that, there won't be anything left of me to mop off the floor.
The battle erupted into chaos. The beholder floated effortlessly above the broken floor, drifting beyond the reach of blades and hammers while unleashing a relentless storm of magical attacks. Beams of green, violet, sapphire, and blood-red light flashed across the chamber. Each carried a different horror. Stone transformed into brittle crystal, flesh withered, minds clouded, muscles seized. The creature seemed to delight in its own power. Every attack was accompanied by mocking laughter or cruel commentary. It taunted Malachi whenever the cleric attempted to invoke divine magic. It mocked Zenobia's helpless fury whenever the anti-magic gaze swept across her. The beholder possessed the absolute confidence of a tyrant who had ruled unchallenged for centuries.
I've had enough of this bullshit. Time to cut this thing down to size. It can't hit what it can't see.
Angelica moved with practiced silence, slipping into position beneath the beholder hovering above the stairs, her weapon poised for the sudden strike. But before she could attack, the ground beneath her erupted in writhing black tentacles. They burst from the stone like the limbs of some buried nightmare, coiling around her arms and legs. In an instant they tightened, wrenching her off balance and pinning her fast, as the beholder turned its terrible gaze toward its trapped prey. Rickus leapt over a staircase wall and landed just outside of the beholder's gaze. He could feel the power of his ancestors flow back into his blood.
Father of war, hear us. Lend strength to our arms. Let fear flee before us, and courage burn hot in every heart. Remember the blood of our fathers, the songs of our fallen, and the glory that waits beyond death. Stand fast, strike hard, and let the gods themselves bear witness. We do not yield.
Mirror-like copies of the skull sprang into existence, but then dissolved like ash under the giant creature, turned its great eye upon him again.
Your gods are nothing but pale shadows here, Skald. Despair and die.
The stone beneath his feet exploded into dust as the Ulfin warrior tumbled into the black void below. Percival charged at the beholder relentlessly, leaping across the battlefield with astonishing speed, using fallen pillars and broken platforms to close the distance. Several times he came within striking range, but each attempt was thwarted by another barrage of eye. The beholder seemed to know him well.
You always were predictable.
The giant Dreamlands creature bounded across a collapsing section of floor. Rage overcame him as he stared into the great unblinking eye of his tormentor. Another leap, and he would be in range. But then Zenobia began to yell at him.
Percival! Percival! Save Ricus! He is sinking into the void!
The big cat looked down to see the Skald slowly sinking, slowly being enveloped by the black void of nothingness that surrounded the dimensional chamber. The beholder was trying to maneuver itself behind cover and away from the cat. Percival cursed. These foolish humans, he thought. They live such terribly brief lives, and yet somehow manage to waste so much of them. They build kingdoms they know will crumble, gather treasures they cannot carry beyond the grave, and are forever afraid of death. They fail constantly, yet inexplicably they rise again, undeterred and unbroken. He leapt to the lip of the shattered floor, produced a magical rope and tossed it down to the Skald. The Dreamlands cat leapt into the air, dragging Ricus behind. The Skald swung like a pendulum, rocketing high above the beholder before smashing into the remains of a masonry shelf that had once acted as some kind of roof support. The Ulfin desperately scrambled for purchase as the crumbling edifice broke apart under his weight. But finally, he crawled up onto a flattened space and could now look out over the battle space. Below him, he could see the bulbous form of the beholder slowly turn as Percival lunged through the air. A beam of grey light flashed from one of its eye stalks, striking the cat directly on its flank. Percival froze. Then stone spread across his body. The transformation raced through his limbs with terrifying speed. Teal fur hardened into silver granite. Powerful muscles became unmoving stone. Within seconds, the great noble creature was completely motionless. Then he fell to the floor with a horrifying thud. The beholder floated above him, then lowered itself until its shadow covered the now petrified cat.
Look at you! At last, perfectly still. Finally at peace. Eternal peace.
Several eye stalks shifted toward the massive fragment of fallen stone. Rikus looked on with horror as the black disintegration ray prepared to fire. Without thinking, he leapt onto the creature's back and stabbed down with the blade of his dagger. Dark fluid sprayed from the wound as the beholder began to spin furiously. He tumbled off the creature, down to the hard stone below, breaking several ribs in the process.
My gods, it seems, are very much alive. Thank you very much.
Then, Arabella appeared from the shadows. The reincarnated woman had spent much of the battle hiding from the tyrant's glare, but all the time she was searching for an opening. She knew she could not overpower the beholder. She knew conventional attacks had failed. Watching the thing hover triumphantly above its helpless enemy, she finally recognized the flaw hidden beneath its arrogance. The creature believed itself untouchable. It wasn't paying any attention to the small girl lurking in the dark. Then Arabella began to cast.
Watcher of 100 eyes, look now upon what should not be seen. Let briar pierce thy sight, let moonless night fill every orb, and let the ancient dark between the trees remember thee. By leaf, by bone, by forgotten crown. Be blinded, be broken, be afraid.
The anti-magic eye was focused elsewhere, and the spell took hold. A cloud of tiny black shapes erupted into existence around the beholder. At first, the creature barely noticed them. Then the sturges descended, dozens of them. The tiny nightmare figures swarmed around the beholder like a living storm. Needle-like proboscises pierced leathery flesh. Blood erupted from dozens of wounds simultaneously. The creatures attached themselves to eye stalks, flanks, and exposed flesh, feeding frantically. The beholder shrieked. For the first time, genuine pain entered its voice. It spun wildly through the air, its eye rays flashing in every direction. Several sturges exploded into clouds of gore, but more replaced them. The swarm thickened. The creature's movements became increasingly erratic. The beholder's concentration began to fracture. The anti-magic gaze wavered. Zenobia felt the change instantly. Arcane power flooded back into her mind. The witch's eyes widened. A moment later, a barrage of devastating spells erupted from her hands. Malaki felt Pharasma's presence return as well. Divine energy surged through him like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Hailing magic spread across the wounded party, while radiant power scorched the beholder's flesh. The swarm continued feeding. Blood poured from hundreds of wounds. The great eye blinked sluggishly. Its movement slowed. Then a crack echoed across the battlefield. Stone shattered into dust, and Percival moved. Granite split and crumbled from the giant cat's body. Stone fragments cascaded across the floor as life returned to his limbs. The enormous cat landed heavily upon the broken tiles and rose slowly to his feet. His golden eyes burned with fury. The beholder saw him and was afraid. Percival lowered himself into a crouch and leapt.
I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. Despair, despair, and die.
Together they crashed onto the broken tiles below. The impact shattered stone and sent fragments tumbling into the void beneath. Percival remained on top. Claws flashed repeatedly. Blood sprayed across the ancient floor. His claws tore through flesh. Eye stalks snapped. The great eye burst. The beholder's scream shook the chamber. Then, only silence. The beholder twitched once, then no more. The tyrant was dead. The moon pard fell. The giant cat leapt upward and caught her gently in his forelegs. For a moment, neither spoke. The chamber, the battle, and the countless dangers that had brought them here seemed to disappear. The two cats simply looked at one another, and then the moon pard pressed her head against his. Percival closed his eyes, then laughed. At last the moon pard whispered something too soft for anyone else to hear, then disappeared, leaving only its tail behind. For the first time since they had met him, the Dreamland's cat seemed completely at peace. Far away, beyond the battlefield, and beyond the twisting pathways of the Dreamlands, the mad poet's final gift had finally been won.